What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Dwyer from the Bunker Recordings and BetterMixes.com, and today we're taking a look at 5 of my favorite reverb plugins. There are so many cool reverb plugins out there, but I thought I'd show you 5 of my favorites that I use all the time while mixing. So starting with number 1, Liquid Sonic's 7th Heaven Professional. If you're familiar with the Bricasti hardware reverb unit, this is basically that in plugin form. The reverbs inside 7th Heaven are smooth, lush, and realistic, and they cover a ton of ground with settings for chambers, halls, plates, rooms, and more. Plus, a highly tweakable advanced section includes a 5-band EQ and ducking, allowing you to dial in the reverb to fit perfectly in your track. I really like to use this plugin when I want to add some natural sounding depth and space to a track, without it sounding super effecty. So let's take a listen to 7th Heaven in action. This is a song by Alexandra Grace. I'll put a link to her Spotify in the description down below. Go check her music out, it's seriously fantastic. But anyway, in this example, I'm using the large chamber setting on the guitar and the vocal plate setting on the vocal.
We made war when there should have been tickle fights and blanket forts. Did you know what you were yelling for? Or did you just want to hear yourself scream?
And this plugin is pretty expensive, but keep an eye out for sales if it's out of your price range. Or they have a non-professional version for like a quarter the cost or something, which just has fewer reverb settings in it and less advanced controls. Oh, and if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Moving on to reverb number 2 on my list, we have Eventide's Black Hole. This thing is just so much fun to use. While the 7th Heaven was all about realism, this kinda goes the opposite direction with crazy otherworldly sounds that make you feel like you're flying through outer space. This one is super easy to use too. Probably about half the time, I just use the default settings, just adjusting the mix knob, and it sounds amazing. But there are also a ton of super cool sounds that you can get out of this once you start twisting some knobs. Black Hole is great on spacey lead guitars or pianos or synths, and is perfect for turning almost anything into a super cool pad. Let's take a listen to it on piano, first on its default settings, and then we'll crank up the mix knob to get more of a pad sound. Now for reverb number 3, PSP Springbox. If you've ever played guitar through a Fender Deluxe reverb amp, you know how amazing springs sound. And Springbox brings all that springy goodness into your computer. There are a bunch of spring reverb plugins out there, but this is by far my favorite of all the ones I've tried. It's full of character and gives you that classic sound on guitars. And it doesn't have too much of that metallic kind of thing that some springs have, making it lush enough and smooth enough to use on a lot of different sources. But for this example, let's hear it on some guitars. Hey, I just want to interrupt the video for a quick second to tell you about today's sponsor, me. Yeah, I'm self-sponsoring my video, whatever. But I wanted to tell you about my drum samples. I made these after being incredibly disappointed with pretty much all the other samples I could find. So I figured, hey, why not make some that are way better? So I did. I've got over a dozen kits available covering a wide range of tones, all multi-sampled at multiple velocities for tons of realism. And they start at just $15. Or you can get the complete set for $100, which also includes any additional packs I ever make in the future. You can head on over to bettermixes.com/drum samples to check them out. Anyway, back to the video. Now for reverb number 4, Eventide's SP 2016. This is an interesting one. It's a great all-around reverb with both room and plate settings, each with a modern and vintage mode, but I'll typically use this plugin for one super specific thing. I think I stole this from Alan Meyerson, but if I have some kind of lead element that's sticking out a little too much, could be a lead guitar or a synth line or a piano or whatever, but it's just sitting a little too up front. I'll insert the SP 2016 right on the track, crank the mix slider all the way up to 100% wet, and then bring the position slider down to 0%. At first, it won't even really sound like you did anything to it, but hit the bypass button. With the reverb on, it just sounds like the track gets pushed back like a foot. Like it was here, now it's here. But it doesn't sound super affected or reverby. And if that's not quite enough, you can push the position slider up a little bit, and it'll just push it back another foot or two. You can probably push it up as far as like 15% or so for this trick. After that, it starts to sound more like actual reverb and more effecty. But seriously, try this one. It's super cool. In this example, I'll pop the plugin on and off and really focus on how far forward it's sitting. And before we get to the last reverb on our list, a couple quick honorable mentions. Valhalla Room and Valhalla Vintage Verb. These are both killer plugins. Before I bought the Seventh Heaven reverb, I was using Valhalla Room for a lot of those same uses. It's super smooth and realistic. And Vintage Verb complements that perfectly, recreating all the old school digital reverb sounds from classic hardware units from the 70s and 80s. Also, one more honorable mention to your stock reverb plugin. It probably doesn't suck as much as you think it does. But finally, reverb number 5, Valhalla Plate. This might be the most underrated Valhalla plugin, as I don't see people talking about it nearly as much as the two I mentioned a minute ago. But I absolutely love this thing. When I used to work at a commercial studio, we had an EMT 140 plate there, and I just fell in love with the sound of that thing. Well, I was thrilled when Valhalla came out with their plate plugin, because it captured everything I loved about that EMT plate without taking up an absurd amount of room in my home studio. Seriously, do you guys know how big actual plates are? The EMT 140 is like 8 feet long, 4 feet high, and weighs like 600 pounds. Not the most home studio friendly reverb around, especially when Valhalla Plate takes up no space, because it's a plugin. But anyway, Valhalla Plate has 12 different algorithms, so you can pick which plate sounds best on your tracks. My favorite two are Steel and Cobalt. The Steel setting just sounds like classic EMT 140 to me. Dark, smooth, and dense. And Cobalt is similar, but with a bit more character and vibe to it. Valhalla Plate is great on vocals, acoustic guitar, snare drums, and it's my absolute favorite for any kind of percussion or drum loops. Let's hear an example of it on vocals. In this mix, I use 2 instances of it. A mono instance on the chrome setting, which is a little bit brighter than the other ones I mentioned, and a stereo instance of my favorite Steel setting.
I drink in those healing eyes of honey and green tea. They seep their way through all the scars and bruises left on me. Like when your throat is sore, a little warmth is all you need to be ready to sing again a happy melody.
So there you go. Those are 5 of my favorite reverbs, but I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what your favorites are in the comments down below. Also, head on over to bettermixes.com to grab some free mixing guides, to learn about my mixing course, to discover your new favorite drum samples, and a whole lot more.